بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, Mr. Fuad Al-Qadiri, the Vice President of the House of Councillors, on behalf of the President of the House of Councillors, ladies and gentlemen of the presidents of the parliamentaries and the MPs from both the House of Representatives and Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President of the Morocco EU Joint Parliamentary Committee, ladies and gentlemen of the press representing international and national media outlets, ladies and gentlemen of the civil society. We are joined here today in the open policy that we have adopted in the Moroccan Parliament in order to work on your opinion under the context of all the hostile attacks that are directed to Morocco from the European Parliament, in order for us to reconsider our relations with the European Parliament. And as you all know, the unfair campaign that the European Parliament is leading against Morocco since the 19th of January 2023 to have resolutions about about and against the respect of freedom in Morocco, where many European MPs have joined with one of the groups again, and has had some discussions about allegations of spying and espionage against one of the European countries, while there is an intent for those who are opposing Morocco and trying to harm Morocco. As you all know, the Moroccan parliamentary, with all of its components, has strongly denounced all of these blatant and repetitive attacks of the European Parliament as of the resolution of the 19th of January 2023, where all of the people present at the European Parliament has reached consensus against all of the parties and multi-party state, saying that this session has been translated in the resolution between our hands today. And with your presence today, we would like to reaffirm our strong condemnation of everything that has been mentioned by the European Parliament against Morocco, and all the discussions that are targeting Morocco negatively. The context of this hostility is well known, and we know the backgrounds and the aims of it as well, because it is targeting our positioning internationally and our ranking. And for us in Morocco, no one, unless those with malicious intent, is second guessing how Morocco is an organized country of law and is a democratic country and an institutionally democratic country throughout transparent, open elections, and our political parties, who are very prestigious and just as prestigious as the European parties. This democracy is watched and monitored by the free press, who is always criticizing and keeping a close eye on all of these events, among which are the European media, who are well aware of the Moroccan integrity and the Moroccan openness, of which are media members who are opposing all of this, and is always contributing to the shaping of the public opinion. However, and unfortunately, some European MPs driving the campaign against Morocco has no basis, no correct information, and no checking against delivery about when it comes to the biased press releases And as a result of that, between those who are victims of a violation of freedom of speech and those who are detained in criminal cases that the independent judiciary has looked into, sexual assault that has been proven by hard evidence and concrete evidence. And what's bad about this is that there are those who are thought to be democratic to throw out the window all of these freedoms. So for the European allegations, we have some comebacks, and what the Moroccan media and everything that is frameworked by the free media needs no defense because it in of itself is an evidence on its own. On the other hand, the Moroccan journalists themselves refuse to be called journalists when they are proven to be criminals against society, and especially when it comes to sexual assault against women. However, allow us to wonder and ponder upon how such a free media in a country of freedom and a country that is rich with human rights to detain a journalist and impose investigation on them when they said two words, Moroccan Sahara, and no one is looking at what happened in this so-called country of freedom. I believe that this never happened in Morocco. As for the methodological aggression from the European spectrum, of which the recent manifestations were to receive separatists in the European Parliament for someone who is coming under the pretense of being a victim, this group is against the Moroccan integrity for over 30 years now, and they have structural hostility which is organized and of high standards. Our first questions are about how the European Parliament can really host and praise those who are for violence and terrorism, and in order to incubate them while they have organized campaigns for violence and against human rights and freedom. The question to this question is, when it comes to the context of integrity and prosperity that our brothers and sisters are having in the southern regions of Morocco, who are very proud of their Moroccanness. The second question: who are those who are for terrorism and for cutting down on the map? Who of these European countries and European political parties can accept those who would like to oppose this on Morocco? And also, when was it about separation and separatism to be for the best interest of the country? How can the European Parliament ignore all of the violations of human rights that are taking place in the camps of Tindouf, as well as crimes of murder which are completely against the law, as well as child soldier recruitment and sexual assault against women and children that are completely overlooked by the European Parliament, as well as detaining people against their will, which are also completely overlooked? How can the European Parliament have such an opinion about the detainees? Doesn't this oppose all of the values that they are pushing for? Respecting the sovereignty of countries and their borders, and respecting the human rights, and not meddling with one country's internal affairs. These questions are targeted to those who are concerned and those who have made Morocco their main concern and their source of income, as well as a part of their political campaign in their elections. This is a political specter that is in the European Parliament, which is a direct threat to the relations between Morocco and the European Union and everything that these relations stand for, as well as all of the positions taken and the stances taken for the European Union. This is a threat to partnerships between Morocco and the EU and the strategic partnerships of which are between standing between Morocco and the EU. And this is going against all the work that we are doing with Morocco, with the European Union. And so, the House of Representatives hosting you today is working on a joint project funded by the European Union, which is working with 7 European countries' parliaments, and this is coming after the pilot project that is joined by 5 other European parliaments. And this is about childish behavior, and our country does not have to make a statement when it comes to correct conduct when it comes to these issues, because we are taking care of everything that has to do with our internal affairs. We do not have to seek validation and to take a stand, because Morocco does not want to be part of the bidding for the European Parliament. Partnerships must be transparent, full of trust and mutual respect, instead of lobbying and hate from other partners. And this is making us reconsider the attitude of some people from the European Parliament when it comes to the meddling with internal affairs, and interference that is fueled by malicious intent instead of principles and values, because they are fueled by some profits and benefits, which is driven by the price hikes of the prices of energies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like now to pass the floor to who is speaking on behalf of the House of Councillors.
In the name of God Almighty, Mr. President of the Chamber of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. the Venerable President, allow me first and foremost to give a humble contribution to this conference which you organized. Allow me to say that I agree totally with what you said on your opening remarks, and as Chamber of Representatives, on behalf of the President, all of its components, and all of its coalitions and professional chambers, we reaffirm our support, our will to contribute to everything related to defending our dearest kingdom and all what is related to protect its sovereignty and freedom. This is our position, our permanent position. Our chamber, all of us in our chamber are in the same room, and we believe in the same principles, in the same beliefs. We have the same path, and we have the same king, and we support him in all of its endeavors to reach the goals and aims he wants to achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, the nature of the relation between the European Parliament and the Moroccan Parliament is, in my estimation, a complicated relation. You asked me to talk about it, so I wish to say that without any introductions, and according to my humble expertise and through friction with all institutions, parliamentary institutions, to more than 10 years, the Moroccan Parliament has never been calm and appeased through this relationship. relation. It's as if it has always been standing on quicksand. It was never stable. It's a relation where the tides have always been going up and down. It's like a barrel of powder, of gunpowder that can explode anytime, and nothing can guarantee that it would not explode at any time. As to the acquisitions, all diplomatic acquisitions and the economic acquisitions, everything we gained through this relation were not easy. They were not easy flour. They were not given to Moroccans on a silver platter. They were hard-earned, and they were taken away through the efforts from the Moroccan side. Maybe this context was justified in the past, but things have changed today, and things are more balanced. Mr. President, you said in your opening remark that the Moroccan Parliament was brought together with both its chambers under its Moroccanty and under the flag of Morocco, united here within this venerable institution in a venerable communique with a lot of meaning. We decided to reevaluate public opinion, and I wish to say that this decision was not emotional, it was objective. Even if we became agitated within this conference, which is very understandable in reaction to the European behavior, which can have a lot of negative repercussions. Our decision was objective and based on a objective diagnosis, based upon the positions and standings that demonstrated through experience that the Moroccan kingdom has been wronged as the winds of rancor and enmity have been swarming upon our kingdom, and these people who have no shame, these people want to take revenge from this kingdom, to tame it. I reaffirm my support, Mr. President. We are supporting you in all of your endeavors. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Moad Qadiri, head of the Chambers of Presidents representatives. We also wish to thank Mr. Talib Al-Alami, all academicians, lawyers, and human rights activists, representatives, and media actors. Welcome today in this debate and media conference hosted by the Institution of Morocco, not as all other institutions that will not allow the sovereignty of Morocco to be wronged, to be touched, and to be accused of violating human rights. This file that the aforementioned minister said that is being employed against Morocco, and that became a source of nuisance. Once again, reaffirm the parliamentary decision stating the importance of the re-evaluation of the European-Morocco relations, even if things have changed. So welcome once again in the Moroccan Parliament. This meeting will talk about three axes: the relations of between Moroccan parliaments and the European Parliament, human rights in Morocco, and Pegasus, the Pegasus software, which was a heated topic subject to a lot of interpretations. Everything related to the spyware Pegasus. A number of highly respectable figures will contribute to this conference. First, Mr. Ibrahim Rashidi, the lawyer and law expert, Mr. Hassan Al-Haddad, Mr. Abdelrahim Shahid from the team of Socialist Party in the Chamber of Representatives, and then Mr. Ahmed Touizi and Mr. the Member of Parliament, Mohammed Iswin. I will also give the floor to the media actors without any legal repercussions or recommendations and resolutions being decided upon here and there, things that affect the Moroccan kingdom that everyone knows has a lot of haters. In your opinion, how do you estimate these issues that are being employed through legal means, for example, the human rights files, where the rights of victims are being confiscated, where of course our institution must regulate and provide the legal documents and texts that should organize and regularize this whole process.
نعم سيدي. لا سيد رئيس، لا ابدا، لا ابدا سيد رئيس. خليه يمشي المنصه. الصوت كاين صافي صافي سيد رئيس. شكرا.
Thank you to the Parliament or the institution of the Parliament. In fact, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Parliament, as well as the respected representatives, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I would like to begin by thanking you for this beautiful hosting where I have the chance to come back to this Parliament that I have been part of for over 10 years. The topic that I have prepared is not what I was asked to prepare at first, but no problem. I was asked to prepare a speech about the falling out of the European Parliament's resolution on the Morocco-EU relations, and then and secondly, the for diplomatic strategic parallel relations, what to do. But no problem. Our country is now going through a very intricate phase, socially and economically speaking. However, Morocco has reached many milestones and achievements on the diplomatic scene thanks to the royal, realistic diplomacy, where we have reached out to many African countries and having the US acknowledging the Moroccan sovereignty over the Moroccan Sahara. It is true that the European Parliament's resolution has no impact on Morocco, and this isn't the first resolution that the EU Parliament has had, because the EU Parliament has had many resolutions on the Palestinian case as well, because it's been 25 years now that the EU Parliament has been paying attention to other cases. However, the impact, the result of this resolution is coming from a very strong crisis that the European countries are living, because as you all know, over 27 countries are part of the EU, and this is coinciding with the World Cup and the influence that Morocco and the recognition that Morocco has received from our success in the World Cup, even though that the president of France attended and watched the match, but it was just a pretense for the president to be there to discuss issues that have to do with gas issues and oil issues as well. So after this, we also had to look into Qatar Gate, which was the Qatari influence for economic reasons. Morocco was involved in this somehow, and so Jose Bove, who was representing in 2010 uh, for the genetically or GMOs, genetically modified organisms, called Mr. Aziz Akhnouch and called me to to actually bribe me. But this happened in 2010, and I told him just go to my lawyer. And now this is mentioned all the way now in 2023, 13 years later. For those who have voted, I think 463. 365 votes were for. So most of these people don't know anything about Morocco. They don't know much about the national cause, and so there are 27 countries, some of which know nothing about Morocco, which makes it, for now, mostly. There is an MP from the left wing of the Unified Party of Spain who passed some resolutions, some of which have dated back to 3 years ago. And for myself, on behalf of the country, for myself saying that I am on behalf of the country, I am speaking on behalf of all of the people that were urinated upon by members of the Polisario. And now the EU Parliament has finally woken up and said that there are human rights violations taking place in Morocco. However, a few days ago, Rachid Mbarki was detained. No one is talking about this detainee. Where is the European Parliament when this happened in France? So this resolution is really uncalled for and has no impact on Morocco and the EU. However, after there were some officials that like like for these things to resurface in order to really divert the attention for the people to not tackle everything that's actually serious about the economic and political crisis in European countries. Morocco is fortified by its unity, unison, and king. And thanks to His Majesty that is leading the prosperous relations that we have with the US and African countries. However, it is important for us because we are brave. It is important for us to we have to reconsider for ourselves. We have to re-look into the Moroccan diplomatic performance. And when I say this, I mean that we have to reconsider our official and parallel diplomatic performance and the parallel performance of the parliament. So for them to try to mention this again in order to have a stain on our reputation, they are trying to divert the attention that about what's going on with Qatar Gate. And so this is resulting from using oil money or petrodollars that that Algeria has, which is envious of all the achievements that Morocco is reaching, and using their influence to push for the division that they would like to drive further about the integrity of the Moroccan Sahara. And so we have to also look into the political diplomacy and the official and parallel diplomatic performance, which is about three countries that are being represented in the EU Parliament. So we have to relook into how our diplomacy is put together, because we have to reconsider about we have to reconsider the people who are well aware of the Moroccan cause, and especially because in 2011's constitution, a number of European countries are still using opaque glasses. They still have an old vision and an old view on Morocco, which is really opposing what Morocco is today. So for us, we have to take things more seriously, and have convincing power, because we know that Morocco is speaking in unison, but we have to convince the others, because now Mr. Haddad and the president are doing what they have to do. However, we need a policy and a parallel diplomacy that is effective and offensive and dynamic. So this is just to tell you that I would like to mention that Morocco has its Sahara, and the Sahara belongs to Morocco, and this is why the European countries must reconsider, because we should for us convince them of what's going on really, because for us there were a thousand, 1,995 members and voters, and so now it's all water under the bridge, because our cause is just, and we have enough tools to convince them. And I think that I won't take much further time, because I'm just mentioning all of this in order for me to receive as many questions as possible. Thank you.
يتحدث المسؤولون الأوروبيون المملكة المغربية، وآخرهم جوزيف بوريل منسق السياسة الخارجية وأيضا السياسة الأمنية يتحدث.
Talking about the values of Moroccan-European relationship, it's a relationship of neighborhood and common interests.
تترجم ما
We're sorry, the microphone is not working. We're unable to translate.
قلنا بأن المسؤولون الأوروبيون.
As we said, that European officials who come to Morocco, whether from the European Commission or any other institution, are of the highest level, although from Joseph Borrell, and they say that the Morocco-European relationship is based upon neighborhood, dialogue, and joint interests. And through a number of stress factors from here and there, in addition to this can be considered as a deliberated attack to taint the reputation of Morocco. If we consider the relation of the Morocco-European relation, and how can we ensure any credibility for the future of this relation? Thank you, Mr. President, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, journalists, and honorable guests. First of all, we have to understand that we don't have a problem with the European Union or its institutions or its Commission or its Chamber of Representatives or anything of the sort. We continue to work with them. Last week there was another resolution about the Sahara population and how it can benefit from the trade agreement. It was a very positive interaction. Yesterday in the House of Councils and in cooperation with the European Union experts and people responsible for neighborhood relations, within the European Parliament, there have always been members with whom we had problems. They used their position to attack Morocco as a platform of high capabilities in a structural way. They used it to attack Morocco. and with previous tensions with other members, and in a cooperation with a number of parties, all such attempts have been sabotaged. But in the context of this crisis related to bribery in the European Parliament, which is their problem, this crisis created an atmosphere of fear. In press communiques, it reflected this fear. It was reflected in attacks against Morocco. So under normal circumstances, such a resolution would not have been drafted, would not have been these institutions, these persons have partnership companies that work in cooperation with them with a lot of funding, and these people are known to us. 112 questions with several attempts to draft, whether from the Chamber of Development or the Chamber of Human Rights. If it was, and if it's not accepted on the level of these committees, it's elevated to the next one. And then there were 18 attempts to taint Morocco, against Morocco. So we can say that all of these attempts are structured. There have been amends every now and then, and it's usual in the European Parliament. But in the case of Morocco, there is a war that is being waged in a structural way. But now, in the context of the crisis, we can shed light on the parliamentary and diplomatic responsibility of these members, so that the European Parliament does not become a platform that allows attacks on Morocco. But these members did not do no such thing. I'm going to list 6 things that I want you to focus on. First of all, the intergroup of the Western Sahara. If you wish to create an intergroup in the European Parliament, you need 97 members, and you dedicate it to a certain issue. But this is the only intergroup that tackles a political issue. One of the conditions to create an intergroup is a clause there says that this intergroup should not have a negative influence on the European Union, whereas all of what's happening is reflecting negatively and affecting negatively the European Parliament. I will read a tweet by the representative of the Polisario in Brussels, who is Bibashir, stating that in 13 February 2020, he says, and I quote, "Today I continue my struggle and my missions after creating this parliamentary group, Peace to the Sahrawi people. I wish to thank the group of lobbyists who took upon themselves, and I stressed upon it, to give birth of this intergroup with a lot of effort by the leadership of Mohamed Sibati and his team of ambassadors and assistants. This group, we know, we are aware of it, and it collaborates with Algeria and with the European Union as well. If there is any interference, this is the interference. This is not just a mere interference to influence a certain resolution. They created a lobbying group within the European Union that members of the European Parliament themselves do not have the right to do so. This is an external group, yet it did all of this. The second thing, amongst the people who were the designers of such conspiracy. We have Crispo from the extreme left of Catalonian origins. There's also Ana Miranda from the Green Party from Galicia, in addition to other people from France and other countries. Before this resolution was drafted, they took a flight from Barcelona to Tindouf and prepared in the Congress of what is called the pseudo SADR. Therein, these things have been deliberated and planned for. These are not lies. Whether there is an interference or not, I leave the final judgment to you. You can check again in Twitter. So, third point, the third item. When the Polisario enters to the Polisario parliaments, they use the Algerian badge. So the badge, they have the embassy badge, whereas us as Moroccans, every time we have to exchange emails to express our wish to make a visit, ask for our badges. Every time I have to ask for those badges, whereas those people use the Algerian embassy badges to enter the European Parliament. They are not being tested or anything. One thing that was done yesterday in the intergroup, it's two members of Parliament attended to, people who have the same polemic, the same rhetoric. But what is important here is that a person who has an AK-47 and calls for attacks against civilians, such a person being hosted by this intergroup and by the European Parliament, whereas who's the person who claims that Brahim Ghali has raped her, which is a known thing, tried to knock the doors of the European Parliament but wasn't answered. She received no answer and she wasn't invited in. So this intergroup is pro-Polisario and the European Parliament has to listen to Sultana Khia, to the people of Morocco, people of Tindouf, of Laayoune, of every region, if it wants to contribute positively. But the fact is that it only listens to the other side. 500 associations in the Sahara yesterday wrote a letter and sent it to these organizers, wherein they said they wanted to attend, a group of us wanted to attend. If you want to talk about human rights, we can talk about the whole context in Morocco, in the Sahara. In addition to talking about the recruitment of children in Tindouf and AIDS in Tindouf and the Polisario regime in Tindouf, the illegal Tindouf supported by Algeria, and the not applying the Geneva resolution and what's not. We received and then they received an answer from the German head of this intergroup, which wasn't positive. In 27 October, we decided to hold a meeting about the issue in Rif, held by the MP Tis Royton, to which I addressed a letter. I told them that I have an opinion, which I wish to express. We're ready to listen to the other opinion, but we also have our own opinions. Not only did they not answer me, they held an entire campaign against me. Two MPs from our side went to them, Zina Shahim and Hisham Eitmina. They were present there and they wanted to put questions forth. They weren't given the opportunity, whereas other people who have different opinions have been given all the time and all the attention necessary to express their opinions. When they were discussing the issue of Omar Radi as a journalist, the person who was accused of being accused of being raped was in Strasbourg. She was present there, and she said, "I wish to talk. If you can listen to my testimony, if you're going to tackle this issue, you can tackle it from all aspects, and then the final decision remains between your hands." Yet again, no one in the European Parliament answered her. So there is an ill intent by a number of MPs in the European Parliament since a long time to hurt Morocco, to taint it, and in cooperation with its allies. All of these things have been were being brewed in the background, but this crisis has showed things for their true colors. It states that there will be a joint parliamentary committee that puts forth recommendations and resolutions that will be discussed in committees of ministries and in European parliaments and the Moroccan Parliament. Anything related to freedom of journalism or human rights or prisoners, all such issues have to be subjected to this procedure. You can't talk about issues within our country without considering our opinion, without listening to it. We can talk about the issue in this commission, and then we can take upon consideration all opinions. These are issues which they could have about which they could have listened to our opinions. We don't say that we have taboos or anything. We are a parliament. We talk about everything openly. We like the reef issue, and we have parties that have certain principles and they have stand-ins. But what we wish to say is that we are ready to take responsibility for everything. No, we have a political responsibility, and we have an institutional framework between two parliaments. If we don't respect such agreements, there is no partnerships, and then we have to revise this partnership. Thank you very much.
رئيس اللجنة البرلمانية المشتركة المغرب.
Hassan Haddad, the head of the Joint Parliamentary Committee of Morocco and the European Union, talking about things related to about this issue. Both chambers in the Parliament of Morocco have decided to revise and review the European-Morocco relations and to take practical procedures upon which the next intervention will be taken by Abdelrahim Shahid. The question is that there are some political sides and trends inside the European Parliament that didn't take sides in this resolution. We know that there are meetings and there are opportunities where the Moroccan government and such entities meet and discuss. How can we bridge communication between the Moroccan government and these people? How can we ensure representations of all political parties with these people and in accordance with the European Parliament parties as well?
Thank you, Mr. Nofel. And good evening, Mr. President, respected parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the media, and good evening, everyone. When it comes to this question, I would like to begin the chain of the thought where the previous colleague left off in order for us to ask the question about why does the Moroccan Parliament has to evaluate the work of the joint committee and why now? Now, because it is because of the resolution coming from the EU Parliament in the 19th of January. However, before that, The president was really victim to lots of maneuvers and harassments regarding Morocco all the way until this point. So for today, we can call it that there is a violation of human rights in a structural, a systematic work that is targeting Morocco. This evaluation is stemming from how we need to be working together with the committees that need to be existing, and they are not there on purpose. And now you will allow me to say that even Europe, and thank you for mentioning that the PSOE is the only one who has bravely opposed this EU Parliament resolution, and we would like to mention that we have special relations with this party that has defended our Moroccan integrity and has really strongly defended all of these defended against the stance of these resolutions, which are political and are targeting. And so for all of these things that are stemming from the EU Parliament are really getting carried away, because for the joint committee has lots of mechanisms. Europe treated us like we were a baby for a while. And for a long time, we were victims to many maneuvers and harassments from the 90s and 80s. However, now we reached a common ground for the joint agreement for us to build a democracy, and this is an additional step for the country. When Mr. Abdurrahman Yusufi was the head of the government, who was supposed to be executed in Morocco. And so for us, in order for us to have such a democracy, it's a big step, and this led to many other steps, of which are towards reconstructing a new country that is for equity and equality, and has made the Amazigh language a constitutional language in Morocco. And this is going all the way to the 2011 constitution. And so all of the slogans that are called for by the European institutions and organizations have found it that Morocco is really shaping up to become a better country. And so Europe has been our friend afterwards, in order for us to really perform better, better judiciary power, better performance within the parliament, and all of these aspects were part of the partnership. In order for us to rise to the quality of all this work is evaluated annually. So each half year we are working on this and evaluating on the go. And that's what's been happening for a little while. However, one day the EU Parliament woke up and chose to be opposing to us. And so they started really nitpicking at us. And so this structural stance that is supposed to be the step for the future is no longer wanted by the Europeans. This is because Europe has its own rights, reference points that are no longer existing. The victor in Europe these days is the far right, which believes in no democracy or human rights, and wants to deport refugees and wants to make things harder for everyone. So the left, the European left wing, which believes in human rights and values, has little to say now, because it is overshadowed by the right wing. And so even this experience and accumulation of experiences that Morocco has had for many years now is no longer recognized by the Europeans, and especially the French. And so in Moroccan terms, we are now a part of trial and error for the Europeans, and this is unacceptable completely, because Morocco is now mature enough to defend our democratic choice and to defend our institutions, democratically speaking. And if I may add to what my colleagues mentioned, Morocco never really avoided discussing causes and cases related to human rights. And this is in order to compare for the international system of the human rights. Morocco has ratified and signed all of the agreements and charters of the human rights, something that other countries haven't done. We are working with the human rights organizations, experts, and work groups. And this is what human rights stands for, because we are receiving and hosting and welcoming everyone in our country. And this is done without razzle dazzle, because the means for us is to really develop the structure of the human rights internationally, because human rights are ruled by human rights themselves, meaning that there shouldn't be an issue in these cases and these causes. Morocco had an international demonstration for the third time and received over 200 recommendations, including all of these cases that are mentioned today. And Morocco has really responded to all of these allegations. The National Council of Human Rights that receives lots of complaints and reports that are being treated and processed all the way continuously, which is work that is done quietly and not loudly on the international scene. The issue for Europeans today is that we're not really trying to make a big deal of ourselves, but they are really belittling us. Morocco might have some pros and cons, but and so this is in order for us to really address whatever violations in human rights that are allegedly mentioned by the EU Parliament. And so, for us working with certain administrations, there will always be some violations that we are working hard to eliminate. And so we are working with EU to help us on this institutional and structural work. You have an experience dating back to over 100 years, and so unfortunately the EU is not looking to work on this structurally, and they are looking for a different approach, which is unfortunately negative. And this is seen in the media and everything that is being really, that is still when it comes to they still have a colonizing view against Maghreb Gate. This is a PE gate. This is the European Parliament's gate. It's not everything that's diverted at us should be treated by the Europeans, not by Moroccans. You have seen everything in the World Cup. The poor French who, when are heroes, and when they lose are called or referred to by Cameroonians or Senegalese. This same colonizing view is still present up to this day. So, all in all, we all know that we are judged by our relations with Europe, and it is inevitable for us to receive these allegations. Zapatero said that Spain said that we cannot know Spain's history without Morocco's history, and vice versa. And Morocco and Spain are the gateway to Europe and to Africa. And so we have lots of relations related to immigration, security, and everything to do with development and poverty, as well as climate change recently. So these relations are inevitable. However, some modesty is expected from the Europeans, who are not doing very well socially and economically. And this weapon of the commerce of human rights is on the table of negotiations, and Morocco is very ready for this dialogue, which is led by the Moroccan Parliament. Thank you.
الاتحاد الاشتراكي.
I want to also talk with another political activist, Mr. Touzi, head of the Authenticity and Modernity team in the House of Representatives. Mr. Ahmed, I want to talk specifically about the timing and context. In this context, there is a gradual uplifting for territorial integrity, and the both American and Spanish stand for Moroccan territorial integrity. These are things that affected the Moroccan desert, a subject of a lot of disagreement. Today, as a man of policy, so that we know that all Moroccans and all constitutional institutions have played a role in this issue. This has become clear for Moroccans. So, what's your opinion, and what do you think other teams in the Moroccan Parliament should give their? Do you think they should give their opinion upon this? Ladies and gentlemen, representatives and councillors, journalists, and honorable guests. First, I will talk about the main role played by this joint effort in the European Union. Morocco enjoys a strong partnership with European Parliament. It has economic and social relations with the whole of Europe, according to which they have to establish a mechanism to discuss all political issues present in Morocco. This is the purpose of the mixed commission. As to what's related to women's rights, children's rights, human rights, the main field is this joint commission. But the fact is that the European Parliament took this debate outside of this commission. For more than 4 years, it's derived this issue to be talked about in another commissions, and made the European Parliament a platform to attack Morocco, to taunt Morocco. Remember that in the Parliament, within the Parliament, there are some mechanisms within the European Parliament for anyone who wishes to attend their sessions. It doesn't matter if this is related to human rights or issues in the south of the north of Morocco. We can't just stomp people out of participating in these sessions. And so, like this, the European Parliament has become a platform to attack Morocco, as Mr. Abdelrahim said, in a voluntary way. Morocco is engaged actively in human rights issues, whether be it any ignorant, be it Moroccan or European, cannot say that no efforts have been conducted in this sense, and there are no partnerships in this regard. We're not comparing ourselves with our neighboring countries like Algeria. This is a global issue. This is a humanitarian issue. There is no person in their right mind that can say that the humanitarian aspect hasn't been promoted on the level of the Moroccan Parliament. The Moroccan Parliament did a lot of efforts, a lot of legislations in order to promote the fields of human rights and freedom, about journalism, about human rights. But all of this is irrelevant for them. They just wanted to taunt the kingdom. In Morocco, in its strong position in the African continent, and enjoying the leadership of the royal diplomacy by His Majesty the King. Now Morocco is in a position much stronger than other countries. As Mr. Lihsan said, that apparently the US has approved of the Moroccanity of the Sahara and acknowledge it, in addition to the Spanish and German opinions. We know that the most important component of one of the most important components of the European continent is Germany. The biggest lever therein is Germany. As Mr. Abdelrahim said, we are in fact subjected to this strategic relation and neighborhood with Europe. Economically speaking, 45 million euros is the amount of economic exchanges between us and Morocco. So there is no escaping political and economic coordination and cooperation with Europe. There is no escaping joint and bilateral agreements. There are about 8 associations, 8 groups within the European Parliament, all of which are against Morocco. Their main purpose, their main aim and goal, there there are groups for the Reef movement, the group for the Southern Sahara group for energy issues. This is not just a matter of human rights. This is about the territorial integrity of the country. This session that the Moroccan Parliament held to reply and answer these allegations was a clear answer to all parties, to journalists, to coalitions. It was a clear answer to the European Parliament resolution and position, which is very negative and very biased and has no basis and outlandish. Most MPs engaged in these have either been convinced using lobbying or using pressured into taking the stance against Morocco. It was against their will, either to hurt Morocco in principal projects or in any other way or shape. Morocco changed as a country, has changed drastically. And these changes have led to economic strength in the African continent. If you wish to do anything with Africa, you have to go through Morocco. What we have to our advantage is that it is true that part of our history we played a part in the mainstreaming of French culture and language, but in this new era, after the era of Jean Chirac in the right wing of France and Sarkozy after 15 years, where there are people who appease the and calm the relations and do not contribute to escalating crises, to avoid whatever can sabotage all maneuvers by extreme lefts or the green parties that always play the card of human rights to their liking. We know very well that this country has to understand that today's Morocco is not a Morocco that can be blackmailed. We can talk about our issues openly and honestly. We have, in fact, been intending to do so. But us, as Moroccans and as Moroccan MPs, we know that it was the French MPs who led to the adoption of such a resolution. So herein, us as Moroccans did not understand this shock yet, did not process what happened. Yes, our parliament will review very clearly its relations with this institution. We are not evading talking about these issues, human rights issues, which we are working on and we still want to work on. according to the vision of His Majesty the King, we are following this direction. But it is important for this institution, which we still can't understand, which is understandable, this institution that became on a daily manner, as my brother said, that did not allow Sultana Khay to express her, where Sultana Khay have been documented holding an AK-47. Is there anything worse than this? Is there anything that screams against human rights like this? Both chambers in the parliament held a unified meeting on the level of both houses, and we agreed that Morocco will not be subjected to any blackmail, and we will follow through promoting our economy, our relations and partnerships with all countries, which our new partnerships as well have been something that they don't not like, but we will still continue to work on that end. We have to reevaluate these relations and put them on paper. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Twizi, head of the Authenticity and Modernity team in the House of Representatives. So, summary, as they say in the the European Parliament, if you are accused, you must find a charge. So on this end, we will listen to Mr. Representative Mohammed Ouzine, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives and Secretary General of the People's Movement Party. And we want you to talk about, you don't know what destiny hides. We want to talk about this pragmatic view, this pragmatism adopted by the European members, this invasive and colonial and pragmatic view that cages us in a framework where we can't develop. Whereas Morocco has been took the fourth position, the fourth ranking in the FIFA World Cup. Those main principles is mutual respect, not in just that, but in all aspects. Morocco is developing its African relations and economies, and this the way of viewing things like this still reflects how the European Parliament views us. What are your opinions on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Nofel. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, ladies and gentlemen, if you will allow me, I will try to avoid speaking in Darija for two reasons. The first one is for us to let the interpreters process what we're saying, as well as to make it easier for the listeners to understand what we're saying clearly. In fact, sometimes it is very hard to understand, and we are usually confused and lost when the perspective is seeing doubles and the balance is imbalanced and the vision is unclear. That's where we find ourselves facing a brainstorm from the confusion of trying to process what just happened and the emotions that are really overwhelming because of our reactions from towards people who once we thought are the guardians of principles and values. However, with the will of the Lord, and suddenly they really are their masks have really fallen, and we've seen their true faces and are now speaking in riddles. I expect of them to become clear about their stance. Do they want us to remain, or are they still in need of us? I want clear answers and responses and responsibility in these clear answers and in this severe tone that is commanding. this is how the French president has spoken to the sub-Saharan countries without eloquence or consideration to their integrity or any respect to their entities or any respect of the sovereignty of their countries, which is the same arrogance and the same masked arrogance that the EU Parliament has shown in dealing with Morocco with a true, strong partnership based on respect. The speech of His Excellency the President of France was disappointing to the peoples of the African countries and disappointing to all the human rights slogans to achieve social justice and all the human rights and freedom and individual freedoms. The speech of the president has really has really avoided and ignored any eloquence and any diplomacy that was really accumulated by bigger leaders, accumulated by achievements and decades of relations. His speech made the African countries really opened their eyes to this injustice, which is a new generation of renewed imperialism in the new age that is based by His Excellency the President's speech, really making it really hard for the has really made it breeding grounds for the Nazist or the Nazi perspective and outlook against the sub-Saharan countries, which have reacted through a representative who has really taken offense to the president's speech, calling to all the African countries to show that they really do have no hatred for the the French people, which is proven by how the African countries are French speaking and francophone really, and are coexisting in peace with still with French people who are still living in the African countries. This condescending outlook of the president is really hated by African peoples who are really denying any interference in their policies, because the African countries are the ones who have to hold the French accountable, and for all of the countries that are meddling in their internal affairs. And this is for the French president, who doesn't care when he interferes with the instructions that they and the orders that they give to the African countries without really any on any short notice that he sees fit. So, does Macron want a submissive Africa that is really guided by France? Does the president really want an Africa that has no right in self-determination? This attitude that is unprecedented in the history of the relations between Africa and France is taking responsibility for the historic responsibility to manufacture the hatred targeted from France towards African countries. And maybe if it was for His Excellency the President having a driving role in this awakeness, in his provoking speech that is also condescending to Africa. This is the tribulation instances and a very unclear positions that are also targeting our country. So are these really the fallouts of the Ukraine-Russian war? Or is it because of the scarcity of gas in the European continent? And does this coincide with the EU resolution under the pretense of human rights from journalists who haven't really been convicted yet by by visiting by Mandela, who is visiting Tindouf, who after the Chan turned into Jackie Chan with a very a very loud media campaign. Is it for the Europeans who have really called for this resolution to visit the same places? Is it for the destiny of after for many for the little days to come before the election to arm people against Moroccans while Europe is pretending to push for peace? Please stop with all of these condescending votes. It's not about human rights, but a violation to the strategic and territorial rights in an attempt to twist our arm. These are malicious intents and targeting for against the Moroccan decisions. We will accept no lessons in human rights, and we will accept no blackmailing, because everyone knows about the human rights in Europe. Where are the minorities' rights who are really homeless in Europe? And so, where are the rights of refugees? What is the position on the oppressed Muslims who are now targeted by provocations against their beliefs? Where are the complaints to the EU because of French oppressing a lot of Muslims in an international alliance based on 25 civil society organizations and NGOs from 11 countries who have complained and really requested opening an official investigation against French investigation about Islamophobia in France. And this is also because of their own imposing against human rights, because it's censoring freedom of speech in an unprecedented manner never seen before in the EU. How have all of these values sunken so low in this cesspool of oppression, turning into fake slogans, and how the war on terror turned into real terrorism against humans? This is a masquerade not only for today's slogans, but also to all of the values of Western civilization and the novelty of the French Charter, as you all know, because the best that the revolution has resulted to is religious freedom. So when you talk of Rashid Mbarki, you only talk about the warmth of the Spanish-Moroccan relations after Spain has really acknowledged the Moroccanness of the Sahara. And this is something that was really the burning question for all of the media that have driven this division, for a country that is really imposing censorship on journalism, without mentioning the oppression of the protesters that the French have really imposed against those against the yellow jackets. And this is really driven to target Morocco, and we have really heard no voices from the EU Parliament when it comes to this journalist detainees. And so the relations between Morocco and human rights are really recognized by Europe, and Morocco is the first one to have multi policies since its independence, when most of Europe had the one party states, while Morocco really believed in neutrality. So, have you ever seen a Muslim that is burning a Bible, for example? How can you speak of tolerance while you are watching the terror on beliefs, while they are also pretending to be against it? Morocco has always been a shield for Europe from all of the terrorist attacks and transnational crimes, and was strongly present in these matters, and has really supported against terrorism and terrorist attacks, and has really helped Europe avoid bloodbath. and the sacrifice for our ancestors who have sacrificed their blood, sweat, and tears for the freedom of Europe, in defense of Europe, who is still now, who are still fighting in their graves. And so the difference is that part of these graves are only a few steps away from the EU Parliament, who is making resolutions against their ancestors instead of remembering the souls of their ancestors in resistance and martyrdom for freedom of human rights. And before I end, I would just like to remind you of a quote saying that betrayal is the crime that is paid for by those who have not committed it. And so we are separating the will of the prosperous peoples, and we are taught by history that wars are started by countries who think that these matters are cheap. This is mentioned by Ronald Reagan. Thank you for listening.
شكرا جزيلا السيد محمد أوزين.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohamed Ouzine. We came to the conclusion of this acts, and a number of, or we will go straight forward to the second acts. Okay. So the second axis, wherein we will talk about human rights in Morocco. We'll have a number of actors to talk about this axis. Within this axis, a number of important issues. Human rights in Morocco. We have Professor Mustafa Shahimi, academic and political analyst. Professor Aisha Kla, a lawyer and activist in the field of human rights. Sir Murad Aib, university professor expert in the field of human rights. And through video, we'll have Ms. Khadija and Mustafa Mahmoud, and then Mr. Mohammed Bain, researcher in human rights, in addition to the representative of the Moroccan Party for Freedom, and then Mr. Councillor Mustafa Dahmani, coordinator of the Social Justice Group at the Council of Advisors.
إذن نجدد بكم الترحيب. محورنا الثاني سيكون حول
Our second axis will tackle human rights in Morocco. You can do whatever amends and reforms, but some people in the Mediterranean will not view it as such and can always use it for their intentions through a number of theaters, as you've seen recently in the European Parliament. The first person to talk will be Mr. Professor Mustafa Al-Husseini, an academic and political analyst. We welcome him and at the same time other representatives. We welcome him and we put forth the question, how did you follow this structural campaign against Morocco as a political activist regarding the reforms undergone by Morocco, which are the points of reference for development on the regional level that can be referred as an exemplar for development, and in view of the 2012 constitution, what do you think about using it negatively to hurt and defame the image of Morocco? Thank you, Mr. Naufel. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today in this meeting, in this media conference, and this debate to talk the European Parliament resolution that we think isn't just a mere instrument to accuse Morocco, but also a judgment of a judgment against Morocco, and I put in front of you a statement about the background of the blatant and recurring attacks of the European Parliament against the Kingdom of Morocco relating human rights. I should say that the conviction and involvement of the Moroccan Kingdom with global rights as a unified direction is in parallel with the intention of both houses in the Moroccan Parliament in its internal and global agendas, which also reflects our sustained efforts to improve our national legislations and to adopt them to international treaties, and to promote supervising public policies and promote global democratic values. Everyone knows that the Moroccan Kingdom, under the vision and leadership of our King, His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, according to the United Nations instrument that leads to is subjected to this mechanism instrument to measure all advances made in the field of human rights. In addition to the engagement of the fact that the engagement of Morocco to promote human rights is not situational, contextual. That is because the relation of the kingdom with human rights was not, and will not be, under any circumstances, the product of external guidance or guardianship. This is what we call an internal process. It stems from an honest conviction. Allow me to share with you my, according to shed light on the history of Morocco, and that the situation that gave room to renewing the errors committed in the mistakes. The first mechanism for transitional justice in the Mediterranean has been established in Morocco, which is something we can be proud of and learn a lot from our experience without resorting to external means. In the legal field and the political and global, the efforts of the Equity and Reconciliation Commission have been applauded for its achievements, most notably to build a future roadmap as guarantees of non-repetition and to hold the state responsibility to recompensate the victims of human rights violations in kind and monetarily through a strategic view. Two strategic agreements have been drafted in the field of human rights in order to promote the culture of human rights and institutionalize it in the National Plan for Democracy and Human Rights. What the European MPs did not notice was that this commission has been given a special position in the biggest legal and regulatory instrument in Morocco, which is the constitution itself. Ladies and gentlemen, and according to the 2012 constitution, as a legal text for freedoms and rights, reference of democratic choices and the rule of law, and in order to promote this, to protect this choice, the House of Representatives supported this orientation by stressing the importance of relations amongst committees and associations of human rights to promote sustainable human rights development and protect joint partnerships in order to evaluate these institutions and to review its content. It is permissible through the 7th article in the internal law to ask for support and guidance related to international agreements and laws proposed to both houses, in addition to the expressions of opinions of both these institutions. In the same vein, to guarantee that these reports, whether from these constitutional institutions or committees, joint between shared between all houses, following the logic of parliamentary governance and efforts to promote national legalization and to adapt it to international law and promote the roles of national institutions by mobilizing national expertise and the activation to the principles of Belgrade that tackles the relations of parliamentary institutions to their respective countries. It is noteworthy that Morocco made a lot of efforts since establishing the mechanism for national review and in partnership with the Human Rights Association in 2006-2007, which was dedicated to review this mechanism in 2011 without taking instructions from any other external site. The engagement of Morocco with UN conventions and this international review mechanism has seen a continuous promotion in order continuous efforts to promote human rights in Morocco. From the first group, talking about the first group of countries that gave its first reports about the international review mechanism in its first round, and then gave a second report for the second session, and then another voluntary session in 2014 about promoting the achievements and conclusions and using what has been learned previously. These without any conviction or no clear political will to put a lot of effort to strengthen the rule of law and building a protective framework that ensures and guarantees the protection of human rights and of everyone under the vision of the protectors of freedoms and rights, His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, God assists him. This would not have been possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the to Mr. Mustafa Suhaimi, academic and political analyst. And now we will listen to our colleague's next speech about how the parliament can be said to be somewhat an organism that is protecting the law and is also against another government, as mentioned by other colleagues previously, because as you all know, Morocco is now part of the Human Rights Council that is voted by majority for 3 years in a row, and doesn't this show that this is unbalanced when it comes to using human rights as a tool to stain the Moroccan reputation, etc.? In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, please allow me to speak in French because I would like this to be recorded by the AFP, which is near and dear to our hearts and to the hearts of Morocco. And I want this to be reached to all of the other European countries. Human rights in Morocco. We must remind you of the evidences that are when it comes to everything that's a given when it comes to the history and the importance. It goes without saying, but there are some regressions, and then there is a new reign that has come with the new 2011 constitution. It's the best avant-garde text. It's my work, my job as a constitutionalist. I've been doing this for 40 years, and I would like to tell you that you could compare this to all of the constitutions of the Maghreb and the Arab world, and this is the most advanced constitutional text and the most modernized and democratic one. Take the constitution, for example. There are around 20 articles that are a block for human rights and freedoms. It's very important. There is also another interesting title about the rendition of accounts, and all of this is acquired, and indeed it's not exactly perfect, because when it comes to indications, this was in 2011. Of course there are insufficiencies. Of course, there are particular situations here and there that are not very pleasant to us, etc. However, there is a dynamic. There are acquired details, and that's the first point. The second point is what is guaranteeing the practicing of human rights and human rights. So it's not perfect, however, it's working, it's functional. It's one of the rare countries where there are constitutionally the principles of consecrations of the judiciary authority. I would like to remind you that I have studied the constitution of 27 European countries, and there are acquisitions about the constitutional consecrations, and this is not the case in France. The penal politics in France are for the prosecutor to have the authority. We should mention all of these things, and that's why it's very important for us. It's indeed a system that is functional and that is implemented with the autonomization of the prosecutor in 2017. It's taken a long time and it was very challenging, however, it's been achieved. There are also some instructions that have always been implemented. The third point, when it comes to the press, I would like to mention that we must really take a look at the press, social media platforms as well. There is no country in the region of the Maghreb and Africa that have no violations of human rights, or there are also abuses as well. I would like to mention that for myself, I am one of those who are supporting the regulations for information on websites. It must mention this, and it's to my responsibility. We can't say anything on websites, and so I am mentioning this just to reference to everything that has to do to the when it comes to the EU's resolution on human rights and freedoms. So this is the same case for the journalist that I would like to withhold the name of, because for me the case is what's interesting, who has been convicted for a journalist and another third journalist, etc., for affairs that have been processed when it comes to incrimination of common rights. It's not about how they are or practicing their journalistic activities. It's about rape. There is a sexual assault. These are processes that I have kept a close eye on very regularly. Unlike my colleague who has really talked about militantism, and so uh, the witnesses were listened to, and what happened is that international organizations who spend their time multiplying their campaigns of hostility against Morocco, such as International Amnesty International, uh, and so this is offensive because for us we must understand who is funding all of these campaigns, because we must understand who is doing all the funding, because when it comes to funding there are political ideologies coming from funding these institutions, and so these two or three journalists that you all know are simply, when it comes to an illusion and instrumentalization. So there is also the case of the Sahrawi colleague Sultana Khaya. It's very interesting. She is the president of the Sahrawi League for the Protection of Human Rights and Natural Resources. She was really never arrested, and she's saying that she is for the restrictive measures, and of course not for myself. I am working on these files in 2021, 2022. She has traveled many times to Tindouf. What is she using to travel? She's using a Moroccan passport that's been renewed, and because of this renewed passport, she was able to go to Strasbourg and have her voice heard. So all of this has to be dismantled, and it's the same thing for Aminatu Haidar, and it's the same thing, really. And this is all just to say that when it comes to civil societies, for myself as a speaker and an acclaimed speaker, etc., I say that we have to deconstruct the system that is mounted and made by European PMs who are hostile against Morocco. You should know that they take women. And we know all of this. It's all about political marketing and the communicational marketing as well. So they take women with a profile, for example. Aminatu Haidar was the ideal profile for them because she looked peaceful and she was a mother, etc. And so these are elements of branding that are appealing to the international community. And so they take women and they make them instruments. Excuse me, I'm not targeting anyone. However, they take women because women are bringing an image of family and a maternal family. So all of this must be dismantled, and we should mention that Sultana Khaya is not really defending human rights because she is one of the subversive elements. What is she exactly doing in Tindouf? She is conducting internships on armed conflicts and psychological brainwashing, etc. So this is all just to say that she's not exactly defending human rights, but she is defending destabilizing ammunition. And so we have to always dismantle all of these attempts, and we must mention that each and every travel to the EU Parliament with photo ops and taking pictures of Sultana Khaya should be always attached with her picture when she's holding an AK-47. And this is all just to mention that we must always remember these things. I would like to also add something related to human rights. Since all of these European PMs are preoccupied with human rights, they have to look into the people who are detained when they wanted to talk about human rights in Algeria, for example. Why does Morocco has this focal point in the European Parliament? We have to talk about the cases of human rights in Tunisia and Algeria, but not in Libya because that's complicated. What's the situation in Algeria? 15 days ago, there is an Algerian League of Human Rights, which is the most represented league and the most credible league in Algeria, has been really cancelled. They were never really notified of the suspension of or the dissolution of this league. There was no judiciary or legal act saying that there is a dissolution. They knew this through through an administrative document 15 days ago, and they have been notified of their suspension since the decision was made in the 28th of September. So there are many websites that have been taken down by a military body in Algeria. They have taken it upon themselves to take down websites. There are financial resources to take down magazines and press and media outlets in Algeria. And this is because the publicity budget is managed by the state, and so the state is the one who closes the tap water of these resources and budgets. There are also 430 people of the Hirak are still detained. There are other people who have been sequestered away from their families and they don't know what happened to them. And I'm not even talking about the measures of repression, because as you know, Algiers has always been an exceptional country and could have Algerian manifestations because there is a decree that is saying that there can be no manifestations that's been passed since 1992. And so Algeria, what kind of human rights do they have exactly? What kind of political choices that the Algerians can make since 2019? There's a fifth mandate of Bouteflika, God rest his soul, but it was really pathetic. There are mandates that are violating all the democratic principles and the intelligence and maturity of the Algerian people. Did they deserve this? This has continued until December 2019, where President Tebboune was really appointed by the army. So these are the facts. This is after the sudden death of the previous chief of staff, Salah, who has died 3 days after electing Tebboune. And then Saïd Chingriha, as you know, who was appointed. We know them very well. We have hosted them at one point. Saïd Chingriha was received by us. He was received in Amgala, where he was a prisoner in 1996. There are pictures of them spending this time for 6 months. And so there are others and other predecessors for someone who was the chief of staff for the third sector of the colony that was attacked in Amgala and Amgala 2. He has abandoned his troops and went to Tindouf. If we don't have these elements, if you cannot memorize these elements, then you will not understand the hostility of Gaid Saleh, God rest his soul, Said Greha, etc., and the others as well. When President Tebboune is talking about the traumatism and injustice of 1963, this was many years ago. However, they are overlooking the real history. I am taking more of my time and I apologize for that, but there are 9 people of the auxiliary forces of Morocco who were killed and they were killed in two particular points in Tinjub and Hasibada, and that's history, really. And these are the people who are talking, who are really for this. And Morocco was wise enough because we had a futuristic view and a futuristic vision. And I would like to remind you that what Mr. Dushbin Omar has said when he was a minister. He said to His Majesty Hassan II, God rest his soul, he said, "Oh, give me 2 hours and I am in Oran." And this is just to say that the conflicts and hostility that are targeted by Algeria against Morocco has deliberate markers because it's in their collective collective memory. And so this is when it comes to the situation of Algeria in 2023. The situation for Morocco was for political concurrents that are opposed by both countries. And so I would like to end in a few minutes on how human rights should be mentioned for Tindouf. So there are 40,000 people in Tindouf. They're saying 183,000. They're saying this for their own agenda. And so I'm not the only one mentioning this. I would like to invite you to read the report of the Office of Anti-Fraud in the European Union. They're saying through the report that 90% of these nutrition supplies have been forwarded by separatist networks with active complicity and connection through the military or the Algerian military. And as you all know, these are nutritional supplies that you can find in Mauritanian markets, Niger, and etc. And so the human rights are now because there need to be human rights that are guaranteed for the refugees. You have to understand that 20% of the refugees are of Sahrawi origins, and so the rest are from Chad, Mali, Sudan, etc. So the first thing, if we would like to respect the principle of international law, is that we have to take care of the refugees. There are international conventions on this, and this was not really so this is always mentioned in history. If I recall correctly, we have to identify this because refugees have a protection, must have protection of refugee, even one with no documents or travel documents. Europe is always refusing to protect them, and there are councils of security insisting more and more on the obligations done for Algeria to ensure this for those who are considered as refugees. There is also the denial of rights for recognized by international and NGOs of human rights. And so for human child soldiers, and so there's between 5,000 to 6,000 child soldiers who receive military training, etc. And so United Nations office has been hosted by two single file child soldiers, and so this is a denial of human rights. And this is why Algeria is misplaced when it comes to human rights, and they should not be talking about human rights when all of these violations are taking place. And so we have to address ourselves to these hostile groups, and there is work that needs to be done. And I will end on that by saying that my colleague, who wasn't really listening this whole time, but he will listen now, say when saying that this is a very good meeting and very fruitful one at that, by the way. But we shouldn't really have to explain that the Sahara is Moroccan. You all know that there are human rights and constitutions, etc. But that's we're getting carried away here. In the context of this parliament, we have to reactivate the groups of parliamentary friendships between Morocco and other countries, and that wasn't done. And I apologize for mentioning this, but this wasn't done. There is the EU Morocco joint group that is working together really, but it's only been 14 months since there have been elections, and so were these relations created and implemented, and are these relations working? For me, I am on the same page and I am up to date. But because I don't remember that if there are any announcements, it's not enough to have them created here. They must be created with the 27 parliaments of the European Union because the work needs to be done in tandem. Thank you for giving me an extra 3 minutes, but I'm going to end right now. I apologize. And so there is work that needs to be done in tandem on the level of the parliamentary groups of friendships, and that's important. That's why we have to arrive at the obstacle of the possibility of lobbying through these friendship groups in order to have some volume on the other groups in on the level of the European Parliament, and that needs to be done with vigilance and combating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa, policy analyst. We also need you in another axis, which is Pegasus. Please, dear honorable guests, we still need just 6 minutes because we still have more to talk. Now give the floor to Ms. Aisha Al-Kala, lawyer and activist in the field of human rights. So, my question is about the resolution of the European Parliament. As Mr. Sahimi said, and a number of journalists as well, but under what framework, as a human rights activist, do we neglect the rights of victims? Why did we not talk about them? Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. the speakers, for the hosts, to give us this opportunity to express our opinion about these attacks, these structural attacks by the European Parliament, which, as the president of the group of friendships has said, are not new but are structural and have been happening for years, the intensity of which continue to escalate. So the European Parliament gives itself the right to instruct our kingdom through resolutions which we know that aren't not binding but has effects on the relations between the Moroccan Parliament and the European Parliament. I want to give a number of informations as protectors and defenders of victims' rights, as people who defended the rights of these victims in courts, in media conferences, so that we can communicate with everyone, to the public opinion, about the nature of these files and cases and what happens inside these sessions, and whether these court sessions were just or unjust. The victim of the convict Bouchrin, he's no longer convicted. He is a person who committed sexual crimes against 12 female journalists. We have 56 video tapes documenting these crimes. The convicted Mr. Bouchrin, sadly, these court sessions were held in secret, which is the right of the convicted as well. That is because there are some details that must be kept in secret to protect the rights of the victims. We had a long, I had a long intervention I wanted to tell here, but 6 minutes will not be enough to talk about all three cases that were included in the European Parliament resolution. Amongst the videos that shocked us, we can find the video that documents Tawfiq Bouachra committing these sexual abuses and deviances against his victims, and this is something I want to share with everyone. Against committing his heinous crimes against a pregnant lady, that is the penalty for which is 20 to 30 years in prison. A person who is being accused for smuggling of persons, that needs to be prosecuted for a number of things. And sadly, the judge of instruction has took another route to prosecute him. Tawfiq Bouachrin was the subject of a complaint or a number of bodies and committees. Of course, there are things that impede our progress. We are aware of our position and we are doing what we can. The source of the UN team and the reports include contradictions about the nature of detentions, in addition to a number of other mistakes that considered, that proclaimed that the detention of Tawfiq Bouachrin has been arbitrary. And sadly, the European Union did the same. It did not listen to the victims. And giving a letter to the European, sending a letter to the Moroccan Parliament to give the victims their rights. These victims of Tawfiq Bouachrin have came and testified against Tawfiq Bouachrin. Yet no civil society actor has meddled in these cases. They did not want to call for any compensations. Given the fact that Tawfiq Bouachrin denies these tapes, these videos, and denies being the perpetrator of these crimes. So today, the way the UN mechanisms and instruments, the way they've been employed, that include a lot of contradictions in these cases, is just appalling. The video today is in the Court of Cassation. The case, the victim of Omar Radi have been subject to sexual abuse in the workplace. The European Parliament did not listen to her. Again, she went to Strasbourg and was not taken care of. As to the victim of Reissouni, in front of the court in the first sessions, denies knowing the victim who was indignified by him. I'm not saying just rape, but indignifying as well. Reissouni has denied he's no any relation with this person, and later he took his statement back and he confessed. There are audio notes that prove his knowledge of this of his victim, and the victim did agree to use this means to prove him guilty. The strategy of Reissouni was that he stopped eating, he fasted, and this forced the court to call for an ambulance to monitor his health situation, which puts Morocco in a bad situation regarding human rights. And then the court was forced not to summon him to court in that situation. Whether this blackmail has been a part, but as with the other file that tackles whether this was a strategy by Raisuli to avoid this court session, this was not tackled. These are other types of crimes that have nothing to do with the rights of journalism and freedom of speech. Any freedom of opinion. Here in Morocco, all of us are aware how we promoted this field in Morocco. We know that it's not the same as the 70s, where journalists were detained all the time for expressing their opinions. I'm not saying that we reached a high level. We're saying there are challenges, there are obstacles, but in these cases, I'm showing you the reality. Among the things that were included in the European Parliament resolution is the obligation to set them free. But the fact is that the European Parliament did not listen to the victims. And acting by the principle of neutrality, they must listen to the victims before judging. But if you just cancel their voices, if you just mute them, if you don't take their opinions under consideration, it makes us consider these resolutions as a double offense against Morocco. And we consider these resolutions political harm to be inflicted upon the Kingdom of Morocco. According to the Social and Political Rights Agreement and the European Charter for Human Rights, and in addition to the work with the Organization of Cooperation and Security in Europe, that just one last point, because this is important. It has to do with the European Parliament giving instructions to Morocco to set criminals free, people who breach the law, the national law. So, in according to the national law, and in all democracies, the right to a equal and just court session and hearing is the right to everyone. The UN team working on the cases of Raisuni and Ghadi deserve the the rights for fair trial. That's true. As to the witnesses, having witnesses is one of the most important things that were breached in this context. We need to ensure equality, and according to the European Court, they estimate that the court has the right to consider which witnesses to listen to, and so this is something that the European Court posits. As to the presumption of innocence, the presumption of innocence does not mean that every person can be tried as a free person. Of course, legal committees have an estimation authority, all of which according to the framework of human rights. Secondly, the judge of instruction or the general prosecution does not take a decision upon just the fact, upon the presence of the criminal. It has also taken into consideration the level of danger and the gravity of violations. All of these factors are taken into consideration. Prosecution as well. Legal prosecution does not mean that the person is proved to be guilty. It's just part of the procedures that the judge of instruction can follow through in order to legally prosecute any suspected person. There are the fact is that these guarantees have not been provided for the victims that were treated badly and defamed and insulted and hurt inside these institutions. They were hurt in their personal lives, so much so that a person died as she was a victim died as she was giving birth due to the deterioration of her mental state. So, by the principle of neutrality, we must listen to everyone before taking any position. Thank you very much. Ms. Aisha Al-Khala, a lawyer and activist in the field of human rights. We go to Fatima Zahra Asawi, jurist and lawyer, which will talk about the ramifications of human rights promotion in Morocco, and also about the instruments, how things, how trial has been conducted without giving the right of giving counter arguments by the victims, and how these victims have been treated, or just like a press release that can be used as evidence. What do you say on these matters?
السيد رئيس
Thank you, Mr. Nofil. Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, presidents of the House of Councillors, and ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I would like to tackle this topic by answering some of your questions, but also by giving my own contribution to this discussion, and so within our jurisdiction and our roles and our missions. So I'd like to begin by thanking the Parliament with its two houses for inviting us to participate in this event, which is the second activity that is contributed to by the House when it comes to the progress of the national cause. And so we are now participating in this respected parliamentary institution under the context of interacting with the parliament and the cooperation and collaboration with the parliamentary that is connected to by the National Council of Human Rights under the agreements of cooperation based on the Belgrade principles mentioned before. So, of course, the topic of discussion is about the issue of human rights, and for myself personally, I have tried to tackle the perspective about human rights in the southern regions, where there are many allegations and many exaggerations sometimes, because this topic is always a discussion for an overlapping of what's about human rights and what's not. And I would like to also mention everything that has to do with references and human rights concepts and what is political and what isn't. And so this is as the many officials of the parliament and politicians have mentioned as well. So overcoming this overlap is not easy. However, I will try to see how I can tackle all of this while also focusing on two or three essential ideas. So the first one is about the Human Rights Council that is identified by the kingdom's constitution as the organizing law of this council. And this is just to remind you that the agenda of human rights in Morocco is a national case file that's been going on for a long time now when it comes to the National Human Rights Council. And so the second idea is that the issue about human rights is organized within the Moroccan structure throughout the many organizations that are supplementing one another in the national context under the governmental organizations, as well as many other participants and collaborators. And these are main bullet points that are organizing and fundamental to our concepts and for the entire council in the special way we are treating all of these issues. There is also an international reference that is organizing the works of the National Human Rights Council based on the Paris principles and values, and so it is based on many standards and ways of operating through which we might revert back to in order for us to evaluate the independence of many human rights councils, such as the National Council, which is uh, uh, um, which is reverted back to by the United Nations office throughout all of the reports that are submitted by the National Human Rights Council. And so all of these ideas are really obligating our jurisdiction and are really frameworking our way and how we operate. So there's also the law that organizes all the framework for the Human Rights National Council when it comes to the protective interventions, especially as well as the many contributions for the public prosecution in case there's a violation, preliminary intervention, and deprivation of freedom, etc., throughout the institution, as well as through the national mechanism to fight against torture. And so, as well as, in addition to the national mechanism to protect children, all of these are protective intervention mechanisms. We are also working with throughout the entire jurisdiction to work on a organized strategy through which we are working on approaches for the national context on all of its sovereignty in all regions. And so the council is looking into all of these case files without really paying attention to the opinions of those who are pretending to be against the violations of these human rights. And we are also talking we also look into our achievements and challenges, as well as all the obstacles that our country is facing, and through which we are working on recommendations. And we're working throughout this methodology that is independent without really subscribing to other mechanisms of operations that are outside of the authenticity of our human rights. And so this is in order to support these case files in interacting with the international organizations. And I am sorry if I am really just mentioning just all of these details, but they are really foreshadowing what I'm about to say. Because, of course, the council is working on individual case files, and we are working on multipluralistic policies. And this is all just to say that it is away from any political considerations, and we are also operating in the southern regions with the same approaches we are adopting across the entire country. And so throughout our interventions in the southern regions, this is when it comes to the transitional justice, we are working on the continuous on the continuous consideration of all of these files. And we have also observed how all of the people who are involved and implied in the Tindouf events, we are still keeping a close eye on all of these proceedings. And so the national body against torture since 2022 has made more than 40 visits in southern regions and across the country to fight against deprivation of human rights. And so we have also processed many individual cases in the southern region, of which we may mention a case that had international attention throughout the media outlets and the social media platforms, Sultana Khia. And I would like to stop here to give you an idea of how we have interfered and interfered as well. And so, this is a case through which these events have started since the start of 2020 in Bujdor city, where there were allegations of this woman who was a victim to physical violation from local authorities. And we looked into this when she said that she was invaded by the local authorities who have been violent physically against her. So we have taken statements where she said that she claimed that she was a victim to stoning, and we have looked into how this took place, and we investigated in the matter by notifying all of the people involved. However, she has refused to give any statements, and this refusal is ongoing for all other media outlets as well, who are working on amplifying her statements. We also called upon a psychiatrist to evaluate her situation, and she still refused this support, or mental health support. We have also really looked into all the statements given by people surrounding her, including family members and neighbors, and we looked into all of the videos about this case, and we couldn't really find any truth to all of her statements. And so the National Council is working on a report about this case, and this is an exceptional case because of these statements. We are also working on a detailed report that we have already submitted and has been forwarded to the UNCHR and the as well as many other organizations that led to the many more uncommon statements of this lady through social media platforms. And this person has always refused to speak to the media directly and chose to go on social media platforms instead of accepting all the approaches from the journalists to take her statements directly. And she always shut down all of our attempts to reach out to her. I am about to finish. And so the National Council is doing its job and is in communication with the UNCHR in operating on the southern regions of Morocco, and this is just to say that these allegations and statements are never really rebuked, but the operation is always based on procedures of reporting, and so our reports are always submitted to the main organizations working on this case, and this can be seen in the report of the General Secretary of the United Nations, and this is in reference to the regional roles of the councils in the southern regions. These cases are of many others in our many other reports, and so this is where the work of the council is just to confirm that the council is always looking to protect its independence and interventions which are up to standards, because we need to keep an integrity of all the decisions that are made by our partners. And so there's a lot more we can share, but the conclusion is that human rights cases in less than 30 seconds is that these cases for human rights are always about standards and tools and mechanisms and regulations that are always shared in specialized contexts, and especially when it comes to multilateral committees and commissions. And so this is when it comes to the experts who are looking into these reports and who receive statements from the Moroccan state is part of our statements and reports. So outside and away from all of these political targeting campaigns, there are always exaggerations that are hard to prove. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all these clarifications. We continue our session. The next speaker is Fatima Zarashewi, jurist and lawyer. Mr. Gharib talked about how Khouyi proclaims that she was a victim of beating. and then a commissioner, for example, from the regional office for human rights comes to check on her, and she refuses. So she refuses all of these things. So how are these things used in the European Parliament? These things are used in the European Parliament as heroes of paper or empty shells that can be used against Morocco through, for example, some media as well. How do you think that these things are used, especially using women to victimize them in order to insult, to defame the Moroccan kingdom? Thank you very much to Mr. the moderator, the organizers, and in order to answer your question, first of all, I have to link what Ms. Khaya says as an allegation of violation as a president of the Moroccan Associations for Rights of Women. I will link these purposes to the cases in Morocco that are related to sexual exploitation and violations. So it's important to start with this on this matter, and I will try to be as concise as possible to respect our timeline. I represent the Moroccan associations against violence against women. Why am I saying this? Not just to brag, but in relation to this. All of this has a relation to such cases, which will be elaborated in my intervention. There was a this was all this was a specific need because women faced a lot of taboos, and these things were considered such violations were considered personal matters that could not be talked about in the open field, let alone in the family circles. Since 1993, which was the year, the landmark for fighting all forms of violence against women, and to break this wall of silence, all of these labels and petitions were very important. That is because violence against women is one of the crimes of violence, and the right to protection is part and parcel of rights for women for protection. So it was important to establish hearing centers that encourage women to talk about their experiences. Since '95, we made this issue a societal subject of social debate, after which women started to gain some courage to report what's been happened, which is an essential tool to for us to get to know what are the needs of women in Morocco, and will give us the opportunity to call to justice the actual needs of women in Morocco. Throughout history, our association has gathered many acquisitions, either in a political, a legal, constitutional, or humanitarian fields, all of which contribute to the development in our country. We know that the 2000 Constitution, especially Article 19, that tackles the importance of protecting all environmental and humanitarian, political, and social rights of women. Also, in according to universal international conventions, which Morocco has signed and ratified. Also, the protocol for the protection of the rights of women. All of these acquisitions have been the fruits of efforts of women, and this is how the feminist movement in Morocco has been able to fight and lobby for its rights. I have to also mention the amendments on the family code and the criminal code, the penal code, uh, the law of trafficking in persons, the law of the register of civilians. All of these acquisitions have been the fruits of a lot of efforts in order to promote the freedom and rights of Morocco, freedom and rights of women in Morocco. Just 4 minutes, so that there will be a little bit of balance and equity. So, thanks to the efforts of women and their continuous struggle and lobbying, these women who were also an active part in transitional justice movement. Why am I bringing this up? Because this resolution has considered the woman as a tool to be used as a weapon against Morocco. This is just not just one woman or two women who were victims of violations. We're talking about more than 12 journalists who have a position in and ascend in a society, and they are trying to instrumentalize these women, to objectify them, to use them. This shows that the European Parliament considers women just tools to be used against Morocco. And a danger as well, a threat. What I consider a threat on the rights of women is to shut their mouths and declare such resolutions, because all of the efforts that I'm talking about that covered the period since 1905 efforts to create a platform for women to report the abuses. This resolution actually throws all of this progress out of the window. First of all, because there are a lot of attempts, not just a resolution, but attempts at defamation as well. So it's important. Just 2 minutes, please. To answer your question, I haven't reached the part where I answer your question yet. So the European Parliament the European Parliament themselves, they themselves employ women. So that's why they think that this idea is projected on other countries as well, that other countries are used by other countries as well. This European Parliament that considers Moroccan women, that discourages them from reporting, was included in the declaration for the International Day to fighting violence against women in 25 February, where the European Union created a hotline for to reporting abuses against women, to encourage them to report any cases of violation. So how do we encourage women in Europe but discourage them in Morocco? This doesn't make sense. When the Moroccan woman bolsters her courage to report, she is considered a tool. Here, the European Commission for Equity, just 3 minutes. They are committed to fight all forms of violence against women and protect women against this violence acts. I'm talking about these women have been subjected to violence and subjected to a lot of mistreatment in their workplace, and this is documented. The recent strategy in the European Parliament that stresses for the protection of victims of trafficking in person. Here in Morocco, we have victims that did not benefit from all these protection, and whether the other people, why are we not talking about these people? Why are we not talking about the fact that they did not benefit from the rights that has been given to them by international instruments and treaties? I'm so sorry, but we need to move forward to talk with to one of the victims of the separatist movement that will talk about her negative experience, a very unfortunate humanitarian case, which not a lot of people are aware of, and where everyone needs to know, everyone who claims to defend women's rights and human rights in general.
Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Khadijatou Mahmoud.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Khadijatou, and I am another victim for Brahim Ghali. I was sexually assaulted when I was 18 years of age, and last year I visited the parliament and was received by many parliamentarians and members of the parliament, or MPs, and they gave me hope that was always there for me, and we are living thanks to this hope. And today I received news about someone called Sultan Akhi, and I know that Sultan Akhi is demanding something, and this is something that has nothing, that I have nothing to do with, and I have no problem for with this. However, I hope that you don't forget that my speech is addressed to the MPs, and I hope that you don't forget that Khadijatu Mahmoud Mohammed Zubair, who was also sexually assaulted in an embassy, in the Polisario embassy by Ibrahim Ghali, because I was their interpreter from 2005 to 2010. And don't forget that Khadijatu Mahmoud lost a family relative in one of those women's prisons. Thank you very much for listening. We will now move on to Mr. Mohammed Keller, who is an expert in the field of human rights. This is a case that is confirming this unbalanced policy, who are from people who are saying they are guardians for human rights. And so, how can you evaluate what we've seen in this in the European Parliament? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the representatives, all protocols observed. We are in an attempt to interact and react to your question by opening this session or with a twofold question. While we are witnessing with the accumulations of the kingdom related or in terms of institutional reforms that are critically acclaimed by the entire world, not just Moroccans. And this is not, we are not just mentioning just compliments, but this is a critically acclaimed experience, internationally speaking, and this choice to strengthen the access to human rights and freedoms that are acclaimed by all of the international organizations, but all the eyes of impunity cannot really acknowledge all of this. From all of we're witnessing from a structural campaign by the EU Parliament, which seems to be trying to engrave a neo-colonial hierarchy with the reason of giving lessons to the to all of these issues. This is a question that we are wondering about incessantly, because thanks to all of our best practices and everything that has to do with strengthening access to human rights, especially in southern regions, I would like to let you know that there are some contradicting realities from developmental momentum in many levels for the southern regions as opposed to all the violations that are taking place in the Tindouf camps based on reports from international well-known institutions and organizations. We may speak of a real will to strengthen this development, and the best proof of that is the new development plan that's launched by His Majesty the King for a few years now, is to really strengthen the infrastructure of these southern regions. If we may talk about the social rights, the right to health, there is a faculty of medicine in Laayoune, and there is also a CHU that's going to be opened in Laayoune. There are also some other institutions in Laayoune, Boujdour, Dakhla, etc. And there are so indices on real life that are really reflecting the will to develop for all of the collaborators operating in the southern regions. So we can also talk about the active modern civil society that is participating on international fronts when it comes to upholding the national views, and as well as the influence to decision making on a local scale. We are also talking about all the colors of the spectrum when it comes to the multi-pluralist policies and parties that are open, which are the one of the strong indices of democratic will for people who are speaking in the voice of the locals when it comes to the resource management as well. I am also speaking of, I am going to be faster now. I will be going quickly over everything that the Tindouf camps are knowing when it comes to miserable realities. There is no civil society in Tindouf. There is an imposed reality on the one party state when it comes to this non-state entity that is completely in full violation of human rights that are really overlooked by the media. The reality of these camps that have resulted in many reports that are talking about the unjust and illegal assignment of these military groups that are illegally running these camps. We are talking also about the reports coming from the violations of many victims of these camps, and this is reflecting the miserable reality of these camps as well. So I am also mentioning these violations being overlooked for political goals, and so this is part of an ongoing momentum to put Morocco in hot waters. And so, very quickly, just 2 bullet points in under a minute. All of this, when it comes to the European Parliament, is always about the unjust views when it comes to hosting someone who is not known by any, who is not acknowledged by any of the international institutions, and someone who is always pushing for violence. And they are still hosted by the EU Parliament, and there are also murders and people who are being burned in holes next to these camps. Thank you, sir, and I will take this. I will talk more about this idea when it comes to the violation of human rights in refugee in Tindouf camp, sorry, by the supervision of Algeria, and are still trying to take these violations all the way to southern regions. And I would like to pass the floor to our next colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nofel. Mr. the President of the Representatives House, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests. First of all, there is a message that we need to convey, is that this insulting that's against Morocco by the European Parliament is nothing but proof that our country is going in a strong and development road. If our country could not draw a strong diplomatic and developmental road for the future, if we were a country that is still struggling with its policies, military. If we were a military country, the European Parliament would not look at us in with all this dissatisfaction. Just 5 minutes, please. As we talk about the human rights in our southern regions, I will try to talk briefly our intervention, which I based upon the memory of our ancestors who lived in the southern regions, in addition to the wakefulness of a youth, an elected youth, seeing that most of people who voted are youth. So the youth in the southern regions are aware of what's happening, are aware of the high patronage of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, these and his discourses that give the road for a cultural and political and developmental road, giving a framework to the roles and works on every institutional parties, in addition to being a mechanism for political dialogue as a reflection of the higher orientations on a very well elaborated and high level strategic view. Human rights have always been has always been one of the pillars of our sovereignty, and one of the main most essential messages of our King, His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God assist him, which reflects the leadership of our king through its approach and its humanitarian aspect, being in full harmony on the level of all its organization and committees, including all the fields and dimensions. Our king says in the 64th memory of the Green March in November 2021 on the humanitarian level, in addition to what is included in the Constitution, in order to ensure human rights and their dignity and their freedom in all the country, we created instruments and mechanisms to promote and protect human rights, including our people in the southern region. This shows the care for the southern region is shows in the report of the General Secretary General of the Human Rights and the reports, which elaborate and demonstrate the involvement of our country with the UN and its agencies and commissions in order to find a solution on the whole global level. The general reports on the human rights of the on the Moroccan Sahara, and the only UN document used as a reference in order to find in order to implement the solution in the southern region. It tackles describing the field and ensuring equality and how negotiations are held therein. In addition to the Commission of MINURSO, its actions and the ceasefire conventions, everything related to landmines, challenges and obstacles that humanitarian aids face to reach those regions, in addition to the partnerships between our country and the United Nations, and all partnerships on the legal, institutional, economic and social level to promote and develop the area and to aid the MINURSO mission in its the MINURSO delegation in its mission and assist it therein, including all different. Just 1 minute. To the lobbying of the Higher Commission for Human Rights in the UN and the annual review mechanism. This is just to respect journalists, and I was a journalist, so I'm going to respect the time frame. I will respect time, and not And finally, I wish for our country to prosper under the high patronage and leadership of our king, in the scope of respecting institutions and their good functioning, the freedom of journalists and everything therein. Now we give the floor to Professor Nofel Baamri, lawyer and researcher on Moroccan Sahara affair, still on the same topic, and everyone who tries to use the what's happening in the southern region against Morocco. People who work therein know very well how this can be used against us. It's even apparent on social media.
Thank you very much for for this invitation. In 6 minutes or less, I have really counted my speech to be within the time frame. So I believe that interaction with all of these blatant attacks from the EU Parliament, we can just take one thing away, which is the video of the victim Khadijatu. This video can be considered as the only thing that could be made as a response to all of the campaigns that the EU has led for years to come, and recently as well. So this is a video that shows that there is a true victim of sexual assault, there is a victim of rape, and a victim of a crime that is not only a violation of human rights, but it is also a crime based on the conditions under which the crime underwent, which is an inhumane war crime that needs to be the criminals need to be brought upon to the international court as well. So, if there is any comeback to these attacks and all of these parliamentary groups that are lobbying to pressure Morocco and blackmail Morocco with the human rights violation card, this victim is Khadijatu, is our comeback, who has forwarded statements to the EU Parliament, which has denied these statements. And so, if there are any differences or any imbalances or political imbalances, it is about these events. So I believe that when it comes to the comeback to all of these double standard attacks, there are real victims, and there are victims who are, and many of the women who are being raped in the Tindouf camps, who are subjected to real sexual assault, victims who are just trying to have the minimum access to human rights, are paying with their real bodies, and many children who are being thrown into the Algerian deserts in Tindouf, who are armed against their will and are really militarily recruited against their own rights. And so, for all of the human supplies that are being sent to the Tindouf camps are being looted and stolen based on European Parliament reports themselves, saying that all of these supplies are being resold and stolen and to the benefit of generals within the Algerian regime that have come up in these reports. I believe that there are two questions quickly. The first one, does the EU Parliament have the right to really discuss the Sahara issue? Because they received someone, and tomorrow they're receiving someone else, and tomorrow or the day after, about the same context. Does the EU Parliament have the right to discuss the Sahara issue? They don't have a right, simply because the United Nations have considered that this is a file that needs to be discussed by Morocco only. And so the second issue when it comes to mechanisms, does the EU have the mechanisms to be just enough? And so there is no justice. And so at the start, Khadija wasn't listened to, and this is when it comes to equities about Khadija, who has a passport, who considers herself a European civilian, who is still is being refused to be listened to. Thank you very much for all of these clarifications and highlights to everyone as well who has participated to this discussion when it comes to human rights in Morocco and how it is used as a double standard to fight against Morocco and to put a stain on the Moroccan reputation on the international standard. And now moving on to the third axe, which is Pegasus. Which is another campaign to blackmail Morocco based on lies that are unfounded, and this was proven. Joining us, Mr. Mustafa Shimi, a legal expert, and joining us from France, Olivier Partili, who is a French lawyer who is going to give an intervention through video. Mr. Representative Alal Amraoui, member of the National Division of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, as well as Mr. Omar Sargoshni, the head of the National Committee for Monitoring the Protection of Personal Data, as well as Mr. David Znati, judicial expert who, at the Court of Cassation and International Criminal Court video. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join us to the panel so we can discuss the final and third acts of today's events. And we would like to start, without much further ado, is going to Mr. Professor Mustafa Shimi in 6 minutes or less, if you would please. I believe that these 6 minutes are going to be enough for you to discuss everything that you would like to discuss based on a technical aspect. And I believe that Pegasus is an espionage app that is manufactured by Israel that said that they never really dealt with Morocco in this context. And it was used based on media reports as well as reports from other organizations that are taking care of human rights issues, unfortunately. And is Morocco going after people who wrote and accused and never really presented any evidence based on what they said? How do you look at this free accusation against Morocco through Pegasus? Thank you very much. But these 6 minutes are just to warm up, really, as we say in sports. But all right. So for Pegasus, I would like to start by saying that everyone is listening to everyone else. However, indeed, yes, there is an American system, such as the NSA, and there are also headquarters in the UK that listen to everyone. If they would like to listen to us, they can always listen to us. This is a very high-level system, and they're not the only ones. There are also French people doing the same. And for the US, the previous president, Donald Trump, listened to Angela Merkel's phone calls. It's public news. I'm not the only one telling you this. So, this Pegasus affair, what is it really about? In July 2021 was when this happened. It's just like a date that reverts to a natural catastrophe. What is Pegasus exactly? What have we seen from this? There are 28 countries, as you all know. Is a Israeli company that sells espionage software. They sold this to 28 countries. Morocco is not part of these 28 countries, just so you know. There is this campaign of press that is exceptional when that is targeting Morocco. And as you all remember, all of the news in France, particularly every 15 minutes you can hear news between Pegasus and Morocco on all of these keywords, and they started saying that we are listening to President Macron. So what did we hear exactly? We just listened to Macron when what he was saying, as well as what President Putin was saying, or at least whatever interesting of it. So as well as the head of government, Pedro Sanchez, and all of these people that we were listening to based on this news. This is work that was done under a strategy that is particular on really polarizing and crystallizing against Morocco. This is something that we need to mention, and I'm not going to refer to this, but I'm going to talk about what's interesting to us because the renowned Aminatu Haidar was listened to by the EU Parliament and is going to be again appearing before the EU Parliament tomorrow, not on human rights this time, but they are scheduling with them on each which one is going to be talking about human rights while the other one talks about something else. Now there is a victim of espionage, and I am now taking a stand against Morocco because I was a spy. I was a victim to spying by Morocco. And so what else? They took this. Indeed, this is just another woman who is being victimized through telephone harassment, etc. However, they linked this to what exactly? They linked this to Morocco Gate and Qatar Gate. This is something. This is the main takeaway. Because if we didn't have the affair of Qatar Gate, we wouldn't have Morocco Gate, and that's why we've had an opportunity effect when it comes to the Qatar Gate and all the corruption that followed. And so we're going to attach this wagon to the Morocco Gate wagon. And so this is when it comes to remobilization of the ultra right and other concerns, etc. This is just because if there are any accounts to work on the hostility in 8 minutes, thank you. When I have the mic, I keep hogging the mic, and that's why you have a mic yourself, and that's why each one of us has a mic. So. This is interesting because there were affairs related to Qatar Gate and they were linked to Morocco Gate, and everyone said that we're just going to attach Morocco in these cases, in these affairs, because the same EU Parliament was the object of a generalized suspicion of corruption. Indeed, so this 705 MPs were always suspected of these frauds because there are fees of invitation, etc. And there is a race for the Secretariat of the Committee of the Parliament to announce who traveled and went where, etc. So they said that we are going to follow suit with Pegasus to connect it, to make it a connection between Qatar Gate and the Morocco Gate, and that's why we have these news now. There are two MPs, as you all know, were part of this. There's a vice president who was sacked over a month ago, etc. But Morocco has nothing to do with any of these things. Morocco has nothing to do with Pegasus. I worked on this question, and there is the fact that in July, I spoke of July and I spoke of other dates, but there was a report, a preliminary report that was prepared by the EU Commission saying that Morocco had nothing to do with Pegasus because they found nothing in the submitted files, any elements that could incriminate Morocco in any way whatsoever. And that's when it comes to the European Parliament that's been really defunded. They also negotiated with the Italian MP and the parliamentary assistant a deal saying that you'll say everything and give all of this information and we will give you something in return. And so what do we have to do with all of this? Just to summarize, we have a system of hostility against Morocco that is using all the possible leverages, human rights and this and that, etc. Today it's about corruption and tomorrow is going to be about something else. And this is in order to take down Morocco's credibility, and this is in order for me to end. This is when it comes to regularization of hostility against Morocco, because Morocco is autonomized by foreign forces and powers. So the U.S. Acknowledging and recognizing the Moroccanness of the Sahara, it was a major act in the rearticulation of the Moroccan diplomacy and the autonomization related to different traditional countries that had tutelar and paternalist relations on Morocco. They saying that Morocco is really ours and we can do whatever we want with them. And this is just to end by telling you that we have to work with other. We have to disregard what other media companies are saying because this is what is called vigilance and mobilization. We have to keep going against these allegations, to denounce them, and to establish things as they were. Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa Shami. And now we will pass the floor to our colleague Olivier Bartoli, who is the French lawyer for French courts and who is now joining us through video to really debunk all of the allegations related to Pegasus.
Le Maroc est évidemment
It is clear that Morocco has been under lots of targeting, and Morocco is denouncing these unjust and unfair allegations and accusations, and especially the ones about using Pegasus, as the international press has tackled this topic that was tackled by the international media about Pegasus that was made by an Israeli company. As you all know, there are 10 penal proceedings against the 10 magazines that are propagating these rumors. Morocco, as you know, has no documents or testimonies that have been presented by these media companies, and so for 18 months, we have been waiting for any evidence or pieces of proof to show that we have been involved with using Pegasus, and so there is no technical element, as you hear. No technical element is really proving these accusations. There are no technical elements that prove how Morocco has used Pegasus. This is an entire international scandal against Morocco, and this is used by people who are participating against using such unfounded truth. And so these and any other proof is about International Amnesty, who has used its own laboratories of investigations to have a pseudo report. And so Morocco, under the supervision of French legal experts and IT legal and IT experts, and so none of these really have found any proof to the infiltration through use of Pegasus against French phone calls. And so you ask me if these facts have come from initial aggressions and accusations. As you will all remember, in 2021, that the phone of the President Emmanuel Macron has been hacked and pirated, and so exactly the moment this happened is when the authorities have opened an investigation about who did this, and there was no proof of evidence saying that Morocco was involved in this. So who is behind these accusations against Morocco? Is it a foreign country or any political powers? The legal investigations are looking more into these matters. You are asking me about more events related to this matter. As you all remember, Ignacio Sombrero, who has alleged that his phone was hacked by Morocco for many times, and has complained to Spain, that looked into his phone and found no traces of using the spying software. And so these accusations are based on fallacies against Morocco. And so we have to say that this journalist is always against Morocco, and so in Spain, it was mentioned and it was really ruled that this software was never used, and especially never used by Morocco. Indeed, there is nothing that convicts Morocco of this, and so we have discovered that other countries that are friend to France are using Pegasus. For example, the Federal Republic of Germany has acquired this software and used it, and that their special local authorities have used this. This is the same thing for Spain, as you all remember, for Spanish media that was shocked that their official government that has used Pegasus, that was bought and purchased in order for them to spy on the Catalan, on everything that has to do with the Catalan affairs. And so, in return, there are also European countries who have used this software. So that was the video from Mr. Olivier Baratelli, who is the French lawyer who told us a lot about these investigations and legal proceedings to everyone who are pointing the finger at Morocco unfoundedly. And so now we would like to pass the floor to our next colleague, Mr. Omar Sarouchni, the head of the National Committee. Mr. Representative Alel Amraoui, member of the National Division of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. So, what do you say in these matters, sir?
اتهام.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, sir, ladies and gentlemen. Based on the conversation that is being led by our colleagues, and for myself as part of the EU Parliament, who is keeping a close eye and everything that has to do with the discussions about the topics, including Pegasus. At first, the topic was about how Pegasus can be used since 2016, and that's in the first version of the resolution when it comes to using Pegasus to hack into smartphones. And so after many discussions, in 2020, the Moroccan authorities have submitted a report that denounced this software. And so, when it comes to the international groupment of journalists, which includes lots of well-known media outlets that are known to go against the interests of Morocco. This consortium of forbidden stories in 18 of July, a few days before Morocco's celebration of the 22nd anniversary of His Majesty the King's sovereignty. There was a huge campaign that was systemic and systematic, making Morocco among many countries, or pointing the fingers especially against Morocco among the 14 countries, among which were 2 European countries, which are Hungary and Herzegovina. And so, this is in 18 July of 2021. And so, of course, they accused countries of their overuse of this software, and they never really gave any evidence or proof of this use. And this is just to remind you of what Mr. Sarouchni has mentioned when it comes to the digital forest that is protected by the Parliament of Morocco in the efforts to apply the Moroccan legislations and the stipulations of the Constitution to uphold cybersecurity in order to guarantee the protection of personal data for Moroccan citizens as well as foreigners living in Morocco. And so, based on these accusations, there were some institutions, including the EU Parliament, in September 2021, has taken to study a report and or prepare a report that was referred to by a Dutch member of the Parliament who has listened to the founding and executive president of this consortium, who has presented no proof despite all of the allegations and accusations, who has really presented no proof or accusation against Morocco, and has abstained from accusing Morocco during the session in the EU Parliament. And so there were also many main participants and activists of human rights and representatives of the UN. And so we also submitted this report and received reports from Israel to investigate into the matter from many officials from Israel, and we concluded that by looking into statements from victims of people who are claiming that they were victims to this software hacking into their phones. And so the report, which was presented in writing, and it is still submitted to a human rights body that is going to look into the General Assembly at the end of 2023, hopefully. This is just to say that throughout these meetings and after 2 years of this media campaign, it shows that this accusation against Morocco is unfounded and fallacious. Because there is no accusation that convicts Morocco, because there is no evidence, and it was it seems that the use of Pegasus was among the hundreds upon hundreds of applications and softwares that are used by many countries across the world. And so based on the EU Parliament reports saying that there are many cybersecurity companies that are providing services to uphold cybersecurity who are also using these softwares. And so the more dangerous accusations through this report are showing that almost 14 countries out of the 27 countries of the EU are using Pegasus. And so the Israeli company is working with 20 security organizations, and Morocco was never mentioned with any of these organizations. And so it seems now that targeting Morocco can be it can be said that this media campaign is more than just journalistic, because it is targeting Morocco with malicious intent. And this is really proven today, because we see that even the Forbidden Stories report was journalistic at first, is still holding some contradictions in its intonations when it comes to targeting and targeting the use of this software based on many officials that are talking about targeting Moroccan officials and Moroccan authorities as well. So for a report that is targeting Morocco, we are also victims to being targeted by people using this software itself. So thank you. And this is an unanswered question, and I would like to end here by mentioning that I'm always at your disposal if there are any questions. Thank you very much, sir. And we would like now to move on to Mr. Omar Sarawashni, head of the National Committee for Monitoring the Protection of Personal Data. And so this is when it comes to the inability to convict Morocco based on these outlandish accusations, and after 3 days of investigations, it is always really mentioned that there are no accusations whatsoever. There is no proof whatsoever based on these accusations. So why are people holding on to this case and to make it go against the credibility of Morocco when it comes to the protection of personal data? which is the source of all of these updated recent technologies, which are all Western. They are all manufactured in the West. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you very much, sir. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, ladies and gentlemen of the House of Representatives and ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Sometimes I may speak French for technical purposes, just to clarify some concepts. We already have simultaneous interpretation for that. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'd like to begin by thanking you for passing the floor to me, and I would like to mention that the president of the committee is based on this when it comes to a topic where we have to respect the protection of data, as well as the right to have the correct information and not misinformation. So that's why we have to look into this topic on threefold. There is a house, there is a ground floor, and the second floor and the third floor to this affair. The main floor or the ground floor is the technical aspect, which is the report that is prepared by the laboratory in Canada. And so this is when it comes to raising certain things. And so this is based on the Amnesty International reports when it comes to providing content when it comes to human rights. And this is on this floor, basically, that the Forbidden Stories report came out, which has mentioned some resonance content. So this content that was taken from the ground floor was sent to the second floor in order to heat things up and in order to amplify all of these accusations. The issue that we have with this case is that when we have a building, for example, if you take down the main ground floor, what do you have left? Everything else is has no basis. So that's where we have the problem when it comes to the ground floor that we are talking about.
They are fighting now to create problems for other countries, so that they don't, the work does not see how the ground floor is used for other means. You have to know that currently there is a message, a letter signed by 200 experts, third world. Within that report, it says that the Moroccan expertise can work on this matter as well, organizing a number of events. Right now we can say that the list that was provided to Amnesty International, no one has told us what was it based on. This application called MB12 works on just one phone, whereas the list of 15,000, no one has elaborated anything on its origin. The second thing is that this list does not include names, but phone numbers. The third thing is that there are some numbers for some people in Morocco who from Rwanda, who doesn't have a Rwandan number, but a number from Belgium. So there are other things. There's another thing, that the code of application to invite everyone, whether using this Pegasus spyware or not, it includes messages that are not verifiable. Some passages that just prove that this malware is installed in some phones, and so they removed this code because it went public. They work on it, but did not update the report. Here we see that this is not related to, this report is not based on technical reality or facts, and no one provides proof. If we want to trust people and start to react on press releases and human rights abuses cases, we have to establish an independent committee that studies these things. The Pegasus report of the European Parliament was refused, and so they refused to receive any independent, any international experts. The problem with Spain on this matter is that there are accusations against the Spanish government for spying on people from Catalonia. The Catalan government refused to assemble international experts. Perhaps I might exceed my jurisdiction and talk as a mere civilian. This can be considered as a step of destabilizing not just Morocco, but also some European countries that don't understand these things very well, and that have some activists that lobby to a certain end. What we can say is that, and in order not to exceed time, there is a logic, a natural logic, and there is an inverted logic. We were brought up to, we were trained to gather facts and then make conclusions. But here it's inverted. This is what we need to understand, and we mustn't fall in the trap of considering that we're the only ones affected. A number of countries are also affected. There are these destabilizing works, and in addition to initiatives of geopolitical destabilization. Hopefully in the near future we can tackle these things further. Thank you very much. Mr. Omar Sarjdi, head of the National Committee for Monitoring and Protection of Personal Data. We will use again we'll hear from an expert of the ICC and a graduate of the National Team for IT and Computer Sciences, worked on a number of cases related to cybersecurity, also heading the head of judges for developed digital software, Mr. David Zinati. My name is David Zinati, and I'm an engineer with a diploma from Massachusetts, and I got since 1985 I work as an expert in the ICC. I tackled a number of criminal cases, and since tens of years I also take part in some cybersecurity cases. Since June 2021, I was called by lawyers in the Moroccan Union to consult with me about a case related to accusations of using the Pegasus spyware, which was developed by NSO, the Israeli company, in order to spy on a number of people. These accusations were formulated in a report of the Amnesty International organization, and was mainstreamed, disseminated by a number of media outlets. Due to the importance of this case, I called for the help of a friend, an expert in wireless transmission named Henry Bernard, in addition to two other judicial experts who worked a lot on this matter. The four of us are experts in the Court of Appeal in Paris. Two of us work closely with the Court of Cassation. In this affair, I'm going to give you the conclusions in our reports submitted on the 8th of August 2021. The conclusion is that we must be very careful, we must be very careful and formulated about what's being published in newspapers, in addition to technically analyzing the data. In our conclusion, the technical elements are not verifiable, as have been published by the Amnesty International organization. They do not permit the identification, the users of the Pegasus or their locations. Any user, not just the Moroccan Kingdom. This leads us to conclude that on the technical level, being careful and guaranteeing the truthfulness of this information is impossible. This is a very important point, and this is my explanation. The mission accorded to us was to simply identify and characterize technical elements, whether they're valid or not. In our report, we started by reminding and restituting the elements that permitted us to undergo forensic processes on IT devices, whether be it routers or smartphones or any wireless devices. One of the most fundamental elements of our work is traceability, on ensuring that all elements that have been traced are documented and registered on a technical level. After stating so, we made a list of documents which we think are based on media outlets or Amnesty International reports to draw the conclusion. These three reports are the user's manual for Pegasus, and I'm going to talk about how this spyware works, and then the method of Amnesty International that Amnesty International used to determine whether a phone has been hacked or not. The third document is a transparency and accountability report that was published by lawyers of Morocco. So how does Pegasus work? Pegasus is a system based on the principle of 0 day and 0 click. The 0 day means that there are gaps in operating systems like Android or Apple, gaps that are known by no one and for which there is no fix. This opens the possibility to use developed software to use or gather data. The 0 click means that you can install the spyware without any usage. So the 0 day and the 0 click. Directly after gaining access, Pegasus installs a software on the apparatus, whether be it a phone or a PC, and it can in any time listen, gather information without leaving any trace, any fingerprints. In addition to that, Pegasus uses a technique to hide the origin of its server named PATN, Pegasus anonymizing. The system permits to completely hide, as it works in the darknet, to hide all elements that can lead to knowing who's the person who will hack into the system. So it's very hard to find the emitting device or the emitting party. What is important is that if we want to know who's listening, whether this person or this country has hacked into some phone numbers, the only place where this information exists, it's the NSO server where it's located. And so the investigation part, which is not of my expertise, which is related to judicial police, will be the decisive element to identify the proof and evidence for such cases. What we did is that, therefore, we included all these reports in all communiques by international organizations and media outlets. In these reports, we found 18 emails which were not iCloud emails, but Gmail or Outlook Gmails, with no link to iCloud, to iCloud. And so we didn't have any elements that would help us to identify where these emitting parties came from, or what are the data that were gathered. Amnesty says that it published 600 numbers, but we have no idea how they did so. So, referring back to the conclusion that we wrote on our reports, the technical elements as published by the Amnesty International organization, iCloud addresses, emails, names, and what's not, do not permit in no case to identify or the location of the emitter, be it the Moroccan Kingdom or anyone. So on the technical level, it's very important to be very careful when it comes to drawing conclusions. I wish to also add that we submitted our report on the 8th of August 2021, and then in the 1st September, these reports did not conclude, and the reports of the Spanish police did not find any different conclusions and resulted in the same things that we found. So, as you saw, the person who worked for a decade in the IT and cybersecurity fields reports, either on the technical or judicial level, analyzing all of these, concludes to finding no relations to the Moroccan Kingdom and this software. Now we will talk with the IT expert Amir Gharib. If you can talk about what before Pegasus, or the Devil Twin attack that was used to breach gaps that a lot of, and how using this gap can be used to trace the location of the hacker and identify them. Can you please talk more about that? Hello, if you allow me, I have a PowerPoint presentation so that I can elaborate more on my ideas.
إذا فقط
So just so the picture is clearer, I will try to simplify the amount of technical information in order for us to understand exactly these accusations against Morocco when it comes to digital espionage. So you have to understand that all of these reports are based on two attacks. The first one, which I will try to explain very quickly, which is about the evil twin PDS attack, as well as the second attack, which is using Pegasus as malware. So just to start, first we have to understand what the PDS evil twin attack is about. Communicating with using telephone towers, and this is about how these phones are being are using these towers or phone towers throughout these radio towers. And so unfortunately, these smartphones and phones have a backdoor, or a loophole, basically, where these phones are connected directly to the closest radio tower it is geographically close to. So the PDS evil twin attack is an attack that is used to fake a radio tower or a signal network, which makes it look like a real one, using ISP's real details and credentials, making the victim's phone connected directly to this evil twin tower. And so this is an evil twin exactly based on its naming. And so this is based on the fake point of contact that is created. It is about the first line of events when it comes to how this phone call could be coded. So as you all know, ciphering a GSM phone call is very hard to decipher. So in order for you to be connected to this network, it asks me if I would like to make my phone call more secure, and I say I answer that I would like to have a direct phone call without really securing it or securing my line to whoever I would like to call. And so this is also applied to internet access and messaging. So the attacks that these reports are saying are based on targeting and attacking public personalities. So unfortunately, this report hasn't even really presented us with just even half of a crumb of the evidence of using the PDS evil twin attacks from Morocco. And so when we are talking about this attack, it seems that this is really something that is hard and technical, and you have to understand that anyone can perpetrate such attacks in real time. All of these clarifications and tutorials are on YouTube. You can look into BTS Evil Twin tutorials, and you'll find many tutorials showing you exactly how to perpetrate such attacks. And these softwares they can be bought by anyone. So in order to show that this attack is somewhat of an attack that is coming from intelligence government groups, but anyone can make such an accusations. But however, you have to show us the findings of a digital investigation and digital data that shows indeed that this attack has been perpetrated by who exactly. So for myself, as someone who is an expert on these investigations, there needs to be proof, which is not seen in this report. And as you can see here, this is a screenshot of an article that is targeting Morocco, of using the rogue cell towers or the evil twin BTS that we talked about. Moving on to Pegasus now. And this is in addition to what Mr. David Zinetti has said about the Pegasus malware, which is working through 3 steps. The first one about the software is that it is injecting the device of the person without really interacting with your own device or smartphone, and so this is used by entering through the back doors, and these backdoors are not really found out by Google Chrome, for example, or the Safari Internet Explorer. And so there are backdoors that are being sold on the deep web, and anyone can use these backdoors and loopholes, and they can be exploited by practically anyone and any organization and any institution. And so these backdoors give us access to these said phones, and the same thing is applied to Apple phones, because you cannot inject Apple with malware or spyware until after you are decrypting or deciphering the protection of this phone. So you have to jailbreak the iPhone, and when you break the system of operations or the OS of the iPhone, that's when you can really inject Pegasus. And so backdoors of explorers are used through 0 clicks, and then the iPhone is jailbroken into when the malware and spyware is injected. So based on this report, again, there has been discovered there have been phone traces, and this report forgot to mention jailbreaking, because for me, if I really go through hacking an account or a phone, it's in order for me to break the protection of a phone. So if I break the protection of a phone and you allow me to investigate it, I will find out that the protection of this phone has been broken into, and it's been jailbroken into can just be mentioned and shown by YouTube tutorials. So we find that this report, instead of showing us if the phone has been jailbroken into or not, we find that this report is focusing on some websites that anyone can frequent. And if you frequent these websites on a daily basis, you will look into and run into some other when it comes to some malicious websites that could have negative impact on your phone. Thank you very much, Miraib, for all of these clarifications about the Pegasus software, as well as debunking everything that's been mentioned in the fallacious accusations coming from this report against Morocco.
مجموعة من المتد
In addition to what a number of experts said, now we pass the floor to the journalists, whether there are any questions. Are there no questions? Okay, thank you very much. I said we reached the end of this conference. I hope it was fruitful for everyone, and I hope that I hope to let you know that the constitutional institution that belongs to Morocco opens its arms to anyone that has any questions. I'll meet you in the next occasion, and long live the Kingdom of Morocco. Thank you very much.